Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar. I hope you're all healthy and comfortable in lockdown. Thankfully, technology enables us all to keep talking, and we're here today to take a fast run through some of the key issues facing our industry today. Welcome to some familiar names on the call. For those of you who haven't made it to any of our previous sessions and are unfamiliar with us, my name is Jack Davison and I am EVP at 3Vision. 3Vision is a content consultancy firm that supports businesses across the sector with content challenges. Using our experience in real-life interaction, we offer research and strategic support to numerous businesses. We also then have teams supporting services throughout EMEA as they use their experience and knowledge to secure content deals and develop our client offers. We also operate Show Tracker, a syndicated research service delivered through regular reports, Tableau dashboards, and data drops. By capturing in detail how shows are being premiered in key markets, it provides unique insight into changing strategies of service providers and distributors, and a clear picture of each territory's market for acquired programming. We span all sectors, anyone whose business is impacted by content, optimizing content offers for service providers, ensuring the full potential of their content for distributors and producers, and ensuring technology providers are engaging with the content industry in the most efficient way. Today, we're going to take a fast-paced run through some of the key areas of our industry's ecosystem. We're here to talk about change, but now we also have to do it in the context of a life-changing global situation, having significant behavioral impacts on human beings. Life-changing events such as those we're living through are changing people's habits, including viewing, buying, cleaning, socializing, traveling, and the list goes on. Some of these are fear-induced and to a great extent will disappear, hopefully. Others are situation-led, being stuck at home, and it's these where we're likely to see a great variation in terms of how much new habits will stick. Will we start saying more often, let's do it over Zoom rather than meeting in person? Will we stop going to the cinema as much because we can make fresher popcorn at home and the TV screen's pretty big anyway? How companies change during this crisis, and some of this necessity-driven change may stick, and how consumers' behavioural change will drive the long-term impact. But this is all layered over the top of an industry that was changing quickly anyway, and we were talking about this change even before COVID came along. There are many areas for discussion, and we've picked 5 themes today, really to aid the narrative as we catch up more generally on what the change is in our overall ecosystem. We increasingly have to adjust the way we think about TV. As TV markets, even before the pandemic, were going through massive change. We're having to rethink the basic concepts we're so familiar with, from content sales to service provision, from linear channels to VOD services, from pay TV operators to online platforms, with consumer attitudes also changing, and not just as we move from Generation X to Y to Z. Binging has been socially acceptable for some time now. Infidelity is fine, with no commitment and churn a different concept. Polygamy is fine too, with multiple subscriptions okay. Traditional TV has in many respects been surprisingly resilient, but changes continue to be inevitable, and we may see some acceleration as a result of the pandemic. That will depend greatly to its duration and their subsequent effects on society. But right now, viewing is up, traditional and digital both up significantly. SVOD seeing usage and subscriber gains. It's hard to be totally clear on those numbers, but it's clear that there are improvements. OTT in all respects is growing, gaming's growing, but the ad market's in free fall. People have pulled their budgets almost immediately. Production, not everybody, but a lot of significant people. Production delays will hit everybody, but you can't help feeling that that's going to hurt the traditional broadcasters more than the streamers. And the outlook for pay TV is uncertain, but we'll come back to that. Netflix were very bullish in their results yesterday about their ability to maintain the flow of content, but this must be a concern for all operators, hoping that the lockdown may start to soften as soon as possible and maybe only a quarter is lost. Netflix's Q1 results were a somber affair yesterday, no doubt not wishing to be triumphant about the market right now, but their results were great. Again, international is a powerhouse for them, but Europe has truly been amazing, and you can't help feeling that Western Europe in there is a big part of that growth. And the lockdown impacts unknown. I mean, Italy and Spain were feeling the effects for most of March. Others were more impacted from about the third week onwards. So it's hard to say how much of that impacted these. But anyway, on to our topics. The clear winner in 2019 in terms of the focus of everyone's attention was direct to consumer. 4 big guns launched over the last 6 months. Apple launched a highly curated service to enhance their growing services business, along with the Apple channels, apps, using Apple TV Plus. All of these were funneling video users from as many places as possible into their ecosystem. Disney's mass market, lower cost, fully global SVOD rollout continues with 50 million subs to date. Something we discussed in our last webinar, and that's still available for you now, as this one will be after the session. HBO Max is more complicated to simply categorize, is unlikely to launch as HBO Max in some markets, but a higher end player ready to hit the US market with international plans no doubt to unfold. Finally, now launched in beta, NBC Universal's Peacock, a business with many roles, supporting the pay TV business of Sky and Comcast, and also the free TV network of NBC. It is one of the more interesting AVOD and free TV innovations we've had in a while, and we get to see a pay TV strategy evolve at the same time. And it's the complexity around the last two, in particular, Peacock and HBO, coming from their need to balance different commercial, service and platform relationships that will make their developments key to follow this year. But NBC Universal is starting to shout about Peacock and show it off. Last week, it's only a soft beta rollout of their premium ad-supported tier, which is available free to their Comcast, Xfinity X1 and Flex subs at the moment. And it will launch in July with 3 tiers, which are effectively a free AVOD service to everybody, which they call at the moment Peacock Free with Ads. Then there's a better AVOD service, which is retailed at $4.99, so it's a SVOD service with ads to everybody, but it is free to Comcast subs. With adverts. And then finally, there is the premium ad-free service, which is retailed at $9.99 to consumers, but Comcast customers can get it for $4.99. With the premium tier and all of those, combining everything, ditching all the adverts, and it seems it will include some additional content, including some non-televised football games, soccer games from the Premier League. But it's not just about the big global players. The market's still strong for launches, with fallout to come from some, no doubt. But Wall Street and investors are commanding almost a D2C strategy from everybody. For many, it's a natural extension of the business. For some, it's only now possible as the rules of engagement with pay TV are changed. But for others, it's about chasing different segments, new territories, and there's no sign of activity slowing yet. However, the aggregation of these services is becoming increasingly an issue. The landscape's very fragmented, and the need for the unification of these services is increasingly apparent. There are different needs when it comes to aggregation and different models. There are newer aggregators from the CE world, the online space, from the hardware guys like Roku and Samsung. And now traditional players are starting more to take a role in this aggregation. Plenty of people involved, and 2019 has seen a little bit of activity, but we'll see a lot more in 2020. And this will come with different relationships, with whether that be wholesaler relationships, reseller relationship, or deeper bundling. And I know we talked about this for anyone who was on our Disney webinar a couple of weeks ago, but Disney, like Netflix and others, appreciate that although the D2C relationship is important, it's critical they get support from partners. And as the pay TV market and the communication market continues to evolve, we're looking at what this means for aggregators of the future and the re-aggregation of services by operators. And pay TV has an important role to play here. with the newer aggregators offering little at the moment in the way of bundling and selling services, and selling services a la carte only, with a few minor exceptions. And until the new aggregators start offering bundles and discounts with services, the likely impact on pay TV will be capped or limited. So there is time for pay TV to act. It's not new, but Disney are illustrating that whilst having a D2C relationship, there are different ways to work with operators. Some are much closer to old-fashioned pay TV, some are reseller relationships, and then there are a hybrid mixed models, which moves us swiftly on to pay TV. Pre-COVID, numbers showed a world where pay TV continues to dominate in revenue terms, but revenues are slowly eroding as SVOD and AVOD continue to steal share in a growing market for video revenues. Regional variations are key, but now we have COVID to consider as well. Consumer expenditure on pay TV historically has been very resilient in recession. People tend to substitute bigger spend items, going out, eating, entertainment, travel, and trading that for staying in and watching pay TV. However, conditions are different now and it's less clear. In particular, we've got the suspension of sport, and then also we have a very different competitive market for video services. Short term, sports is a big issue, but one would hope this would remain shorter term. Aside from the overall fundamentals when it comes to the economics of sports teams, the short-term revenue loss from a lack of premium subs, along with restricted subscriber recruitment, will hurt, but the lockdown will end. But of more concern is consumers have different choice now, meaning pay TV could face harder times than previous recessions. But they're not the only ones exposed. SVOD are exposed to increasing churn, with more switching, potentially a byproduct of stay-at-home, increased consumption, and challenges with the content pipeline as well from production slowdowns. Recessionary implications, though, will be hard to predict. If you listen to Netflix results 2 days ago, you'd be struck by the tone they took, with announcing their very good results and the honest approach to forward guidance, using the word literally guesswork. Lots of things could be caught by pay TV innovation, but using broad brushstrokes with TV, we've seen big change and it can only continue. More on demand, more flexibility with packages, more innovative relationships and services, and adjustments to the pricing proposition. We're not here to really address the finer points with long lists of innovations by operators, easy to create, but there are some core issues rising to the top. Our survey at the end of the year showed a focus on third-party OTT service inclusion and on demand, but our discussions also relay an overall landscape of cutting third-party channel costs, and many relying on bundled economics to fight competition as well. And some of the other initiatives seemingly were less important. Operators are clearly struggling with the challenge of potentially cannibalizing revenues with pricing innovations like skinny pay TV, which is needed by many to grow the market in certain countries, and other service innovations such as virtual pay TV. New initiatives in 2019 in this area have on the whole been restrained. There's been extensive innovation with thinner client devices, app-based services, streaming device integration with lots of Fire Stick, Chromecast, Roku and Apple TV launches, but often those are without radical proposition change, and often they still require broadband contracts. Frequently they don't offer a complete service. In fact, most of the time they don't offer a complete service, including in particular free TV channels. Some of these examples here don't strictly qualify as virtual pay TV in the strictest sense of the term, but actually that's the point of putting them here. There are some signs of more launches outside of the US and some signs of struggles in the US, with Etisalat's recent launch in the UAE of Switch TV here on the left, and some of the other restructuring of offers in Germany. But outside of the US, most initiatives in fact have no free TV offer, being the hardest to negotiate properly and fit into a challenging cost model, and are a subset of the pay TV business. But finally, going back to the issue of aggregation, very different levels going on. Again, illustrating here, with Disney, we talked about the difference between the Sky integration and the Canal partnership, and there it's a good example of the variation. As we discussed when discussing, as we said when we're discussing direct-to-consumer, aggregation of SVOD and OTT services is becoming more of an issue, and the independent let's say, a la carte aggregators are unlikely in the short term to really hurt traditional pay TV. But pay TV needs to play a stronger role before new platforms do start bundling and discounting. I mean, just two of the ones here in particular, Vodafone in Spain and Canal in France, are significantly kind of bundling numerous services. The Vodafone Serie Lover pack has HBO Spain, Prime Video, and Stars Play in it, and the Canal Cine Series pack now has Disney, Netflix, OCS, all the Canal channels, and more services in it. It's huge in its construct. So moving on to free TV. Another tough set to discuss, given the unbelievable situation they find themselves in now. They've been losing audiences for some time now, with the problem worse for younger segments. And now post pandemic, they're getting a viewing spike, and they're getting great numbers in that sense. But unfortunately, the ad market has collapsed on them. I would say kind of two of the biggest issues facing free TV right now are maintaining access to content, again, in a fiercely competitive market, and defending their traditional TV ad revenues whilst also trying to diversify away from them and not having to depend on them. With the first, they're working hard to secure great content, either focusing on kind of loose co-production alliances or more structured alliances, some case growing their studio production business like ITV here in the UK to improve their strength in a competitive market, as well as potentially grow revenues. With ad revenues, they're working to rebalance the revenues away from traditional advertising through both online growth through their players and through addressable and targeted advertising. But in consumer proposition terms, we feel that the pace of change last year has really picked up, with channels innovating their consumer proposition in lots of different ways, either growing their catch-up service into quite a big AVOD service, adding an SVOD layer, cooperating with other broadcasters, and working in lots of different ways. Innovation with scheduling is increasing. This data comes out of our show tracker service and simply shows the levels of enhanced catch-up that free TV is reaching. The number of series offered with enhanced catch-up, by that I mean it either is dropped as a full box set on Premiere, or they add each episode week on week until they have a complete box set that remains on the service for a period. And this has reached 76% now with the 2018-19 new season shows. There are some markets globally slower to adjust beneath those numbers, but change is rapid. And channels are not just enhancing catch-up simply now, but offering all of these box sets simultaneously and or exclusively, and chasing pure AVOD revenues. And here's just a selected example of some AVOD premieres by broadcasters in the last 6 months, with free TV trying to in a good position to try and capitalize on a position to drive their digital growth with a brand safe advertising solution, a legacy position with great prominence. They're selling from TV sales houses. Their CPMs are probably better than YouTube, and their measurement currency is more accepted. But they're still in a tricky position with their linear viewing falling, younger segments falling away fast, and social media dominates spend in that digital and in the online video advertising space. And post-COVID, the challenges with content supply are likely to hurt them the most. Which brings us on nicely to AVOD. The interest in AVOD platforms increased to fever pitch last year after Viacom's purchase of Pluto TV and their subsequent acquisitions, and the other subsequent acquisitions and the other launches, either in new markets or new services. A couple of months ago, I would have said the sector was riding high on the hype curve, and it still is to some extent, but it does now face huge pressure from the falls in the advertising market that have come from the pandemic. The ad market looks set for a significant decline as advertisers tighten their purse strings, with some suggestions that digital will not decline as much as traditional media, but no one really can be sure of the extent and the duration of it. It's fair to assume that the decline will hit AVOD, but when they will resume kind of faster growth it is up in the air. It's good to be clear on what we're talking about, and I won't go through the simple definition as it is a big catch-all term, but there are very different types of AVOD. We've already talked about broadcasters, and a broadcaster AVOD is a sector that's growing very fast in revenue terms, but it is starting from a low level. And then there's social, with the duopoly of Facebook and YouTube, which represent kind of almost 80% of online video ad spend. Still growing despite issues they've had with measurement and adjacency. They're not slowing down. But then there are others. I keep them in a big bucket, but they are quite different. There's online services, there's home end specialists, there's consumer electronic manufacturers, and there are local and multi-market players growing in number, and more launches expected. The market is likely to shake out in the coming year, as there probably are too many players, but strategic investment has been increasing, and partnerships are likely to increase. It's seen some serious evolution from its early days when it was resisted by licensors and seen as something that couldn't exist alongside SVOD and free TV when licensing content, with SVOD growing very fast for them. But AVOD is entering a new stage of development marked by these new entrants and investment. Content owners are broadening their activity beyond SVOD, where there's previously been a reluctance. And territorially, AVOD has moved on from markets that were the markets where they were challenged by affordability and acceptance of SVOD. Started out with YouTube, and then early Eastern European and Asian initiatives, and then early catch-up initiatives. And as they matured, we saw people coming in, then the startups coming like Pluto and Tubi, and then bigger players like Walmart, Samsung, Facebook, Amazon, with 3 big purchases in the last 12 to 14 months. Only this week, to add to those, Comcast, through their NBC subsidiary Fandango, have bought Voodoo, with Comcast now having to strategically align Voodoo's TVOD, EST, and AVOD service with Fandango's ticketing and TVOD service, Zumo, Peacock, and Sky streaming experiences. And whenever traditional media start buying companies, you need to start watching where the sector lies on the hype curve. There are varying degrees of focus and reasons behind this, and we won't go into those, but there are some more important characteristics of the services they bought, and some, for example, some felt that Comcast's acquisition of Zumo was much more about their technical positioning on smart TVs in the US than anything else. The scale and measurement are hard to be clear on, with many of these services keeping their user bases kind of relatively well hidden in their own black boxes. But in scale terms, they have some way to go in terms of catching social media and YouTube. There are many different and varied approaches to presentation delivery, with ad loads varying and limited personalization to date by most of them. But these numbers represent the kind of a view of the monthly average users of these services, as best you can get from corporate releases. But licensing remains in the main on a revenue share basis, except for some movies and for some situations. And there is an interesting sector to watch, which will be the strong local players moving into AVOD with premium content, in particular the broadcasters, and it's their services that are really at this stage coming in with premieres and with exclusive content. But licensing models are still on the lower end of the scale, but exceptions are emerging. There'll be many struggles and many strategy revisions and impacts to come through from the current crisis. But the US and the global players, Pluto, Roku, Samsung, Tubi, and others, they keep evolving, moving into new territories. So there's Tubi in Australia, Pluto in LATAM, Roku in the UK. They've all been ramping up activity, securing positioning on a variety of devices and licensing more. And importantly, in a licensing sense, they are generating better revenues, and this in turn helps feed their business, because it helps improve the content set available to them, and we'll even see them, not just the broadcasters, moving perhaps into more first window content and even exclusive content in the future. Finally, the content distribution market. The global market for content has always seen change, but over the last 10 years, we've seen kind of massive change. In the US alone, scripted series production has increased about 150% since 2010, and right now it looks like 2019 there was over 500 new series, which is phenomenal. It's growing again. TV productions in the UK have increasingly exceeded the $1 million per hour production budget that lets them qualify for high-end tax relief, with 123 qualifying productions in 2019. That's up from about 40 in 2012. And more recently, digital service provision, kind of its acceleration and the activity of everybody from Netflix and the fan companies have changed the way people justify their investment and contributed to this, with SVODs, with Netflix's activity pretty relentless, and their spend to exceed 17 billion in 2020, as we understand it, with a big focus on foreign. And I think the India spend alone is $400 million. I think the period's unclear, but 2019, 2020. But local pay TV operators investing more too. We've talked about kind of Movistar, Sky, and Viaplay, but they're not slowing down. Alibaba is another example of someone evolving their strategy. Their spend on their own produced content now is going to be taking 50% of their budget, which is doubling from its share in terms of what it was from 2018 to 2019. And they're increasing their export volumes as well, selling through to clients in Southeast Asia and to some extent to Netflix. But there's still a good market for distribution out there, as broadcasters continue to respond and try to meet the needs of the consumers. That there's still a vibrant market for distribution. Well, there's some signs that US series may be finding it even harder in selected European markets from the 2018-19 TV season, and the original production, if this may be impacting third-party acquisition budgets. Our data is still showing a good market of over 250 services in just these 14 markets. The share of where that content is going is evolving as the presence of local SVOD players and some innovation, very limited in this case, and AVOD shows more change in the market. Netflix fell out of the acquisition market really with the 18-19 new season shows, with their focus on production. In 2017, that 23% of share of sales to global SVOD, that was 17% of that was Netflix, and in 2018 that was down to 6%. But whilst that's going on, local SVOD picked up a lot of content. As we show with free TV, all broadcasters are increasingly enhancing their usage, and this data now includes pay as well. And this is important as it underpins the increased value in the first sale through the fact that they're using it more, and the changing shape of production's finances. Usage and USPs impacted the value between windows, and what this shows you here is the flow of content from the first window to the second window, which is a key area, not just because lots of distributors have got content that's come out of its first window with SVOD and they're able to sell a second window, but it's key because what this shows you is all shows with two windows, and it shows that there is a flow. And although the majority of second window shows are going to SVOD, there is a flow after SVOD to TV, which is the area where people are so unsure of the value and so unsure of what to do. But we will see more experimentation, and we will see more kind of more internal valuations of this content as the first window can't be the only piece of a project. It can't be the only piece of value of the project. So it is important, and we'll see how that evolves. Finally, it's now difficult to separate production from any discussion about distribution, which brings us on maybe to more critical issues arising from the pandemic at the moment, but helped by all of the supporting factors with finance, tax credits, risk, and all the different competition. Production has been booming, demand has been slowing, but kind of the local players are increasingly trying to find ways to maintain a good pipeline of content. And in some cases that means working together because they're in an incredibly competitive market with big spenders. And by working together, they can improve their leverage in the market. But that is not always easy. Agreeing to have the same vision for a project and getting all the commercials together, it has never been easy. And the pandemic has lots of potential implications for businesses, but the direction of travel prior to it was that the higher end of the market was increasingly an area limited to the global streamers. This may now accelerate further as local operators look to limit the risk, and perhaps, who knows, but necessity-driven changes due to the pandemic could encourage more people to board projects early, add certainty to those projects and to get the finance together and limit the risk, and potentially compromise on vision. But ultimately, it may be the streamers that capitalise as others struggle with less certain funding models, and we may end up with a much clearer tiers of content in budgetary terms and clearer definitions of who works in each area. That's it. I'm almost out of time, but we would welcome questions through the chat system on Zoom. Thanks for listening. If there are issues we touched on today that you'd like to discuss more, please reach out. I'm aware we covered a lot of ground, but we were trying to think more holistically about change and across a bunch of areas. But we hope you found it useful. I'll have a look now across just to check if any chats are coming through. I think we're all right. Let's see. No, I think that is it. So thanks a lot for everybody listening, and stay safe, and we'll no doubt be in touch soon about our next webinar. Take care.